Good evening, everyone. Just as a way of scaring you all, these three lovely people have given me permission to host today. So you've got to put up with me talking too much.
On a trial basis.
Yeah, you always put up with me talking too much. So basically today we're going to focus on local government reform, and they decided it was probably best that I hosted it, just because I'm the only one that's not an elected councillor. I mean, I keep trying, but it doesn't quite work. Is it worth somebody summarising exactly where we are with the different options at the moment around Cambridgeshire, if you can remember?
Do you want to start with that, Alex? Do you want to have the first go? Should we let's leave Huntingdonshire out of it so we can have a bit of theatre?
Yes, focus more on Huntingdonshire. So I think so far we know, obviously, County Council, Cambridgeshire County was first, and the Lib Dems pushed the vote on option A or against or abstain. But option A did pass because obviously Lib Dems have majority. So the Lib Dems won, Lib Dem abstention plus Tom Sanderson voted for option A.
But can I also point out that they voted for option A without publishing the business case? So in reality, the only option that's not really on the table is option A, because they haven't published the full business case. So
but I said you don't have to. So I think it still is submitted as such.
It would have been kind, wouldn't it, for the rest of us to try?
It'd be a more informed vote, to say the least. But anyway, County Council voted for option A. I've actually been. I heard that I was quite a bit too negative against option A. I'm still very much against option A, and I'm happy to say so. So whoever is listening and thinks I'm doing too much negative campaigning on option A is not a good idea to vote for option A, especially in the absence of the evidence for it.
I'm going to start with a bit of flattery with this, but given how hard you work and how positive you are about getting out there and doing stuff for your residents, a bit of negativity you're entitled to, in my view.
Yeah, so no to option A without a business case. I'm actually not necessarily opposed to the idea. It's just I thought the vote in the county council was just ridiculous for us to vote without actually having all the information or not be able to express any other preference other than option A for or against. So that's county. Cambridge City and South Cambs. I think the South Cambs meeting is still on Monday, the extraordinary full council. They will both go for option B. They have said so, and it will be completely surprising, actually, to everyone if they didn't go for option B. East Cambs, who was following East Cambs? Option B as well.
B.
Yeah,
I know.
So that came out this week. They've gone for option B as well, despite the fact that option A, put them with Cambridge City and South Cambs. The district council themselves have voted for option B, which puts them with Peterborough and Fenland, which is interesting, I think.
The reason they've gone against the Cambridge option, I mean, there may be some politics underneath this, almost certainly, but part of what Anna's been saying quite strongly on social media is that she feels like East Cambs would be a dumping ground for all of South Cambridgeshire and City's housing.
Yeah, I heard that one as well. So that's three option Bs from East Cambs, Cambridge City, and South Cambs. Very interesting. I actually followed, and Martin will have more thoughts on this. I followed the recording of the Fenland council meeting on LGR, where they went for option D, which is, I have to say, my least favorite option, not least because it splits Huntingdonshire in half. And I actually found it quite surprising because I thought they would go for probably an option A or maybe even an option B, but they obviously gave their reasons. I mean, Chris Bowden as leader gave his reasons there. They strongly criticized the government process as well, part of that council meeting, saying it's too rushed and so on and so forth. But I actually I was quite surprised they went for D. And obviously Peterborough
reluctantly, it was like It was like D, but we're only just saying D because we have to, and we don't agree with the whole process.
Exactly.
I find it a little bit bizarre. I mean, they're resisting. They're basically resistant to unification with Peterborough, and politically, I would have thought that made sense for them, to be honest. In terms of control of the council and all that stuff. Albeit, I'm a bit cynical about the long-term benefits of that. But I think it's a bit odd. And the split in Huntingdon, I think if you found a split further north with Huntingdon and closer to Peterborough, it might make some sense, but not where the split is. It doesn't make sense.
I was trying to convince my God Manchester colleagues to vote D to free themselves of the tyranny of Huntingdon. But
I also think this thing about a royal commission. I think that's just a bit of play into the audience, isn't it? I think we've covered this before, so I'm not going to go into it in depth. But there's a reality. If the government didn't do this now, it would never happen.
Okay, so so there is. I get the need to do it, and we are where we are. This is gonna happen. So there's not, whatever. I think there are problems with the way with the process, and I think that the yes, you need to do it quickly, but I think that getting the councils themselves to come up with proposals presents a lot, has problems. Any system any one you go for has problems. Getting the councils to do it immediately means, given how people feel about politics at the moment, people will be looking for ulterior motives. And if you're in whose interest are you making the decision? Because it's got to be a something that works for the whole area that is being looked at. And so are you looking for the area as a whole, the people you represent now in your ward or your division? Are you looking for your existing authority? So I think there are, look, this is going to happen. This is the process we're going for. I think that there are problems with it, and you could have still done it quickly, but without going the way they have. And I think that is presenting problems with what's coming up. Yeah.
No, can I just offer a view to you, Mark?
Even
go on. Do you want to go or not? You go.
No, you first.
All right. So a counter view to what you're saying now is I spent. I think was it Tuesday or Wednesday this week was International Men's Day, and I took part in a really fabulous panel actually where I talked with Simon Bywater and Ross Martin. We're talking about our own mental health and being really honest, and it was a really, really good experience. But afterwards, I had a chat with Ross, and I think that Ross, who works for Ben and BCJecti, and Ross, they seem fairly convinced, that the government was going to go with option D because it's being proposed by two Labour MPs who have got the government's. Maybe that's a bit of paranoia on their part. It's not a view that I necessarily share. But if you looked at the speeches, as we're going to get onto in Huntingdonshire, lots of the Conservative members were outraged at the possibility of option D. And I think actually every member of Huntingdonshire District Council was outraged and fearful of option D, which was done without our consent or any of our support.
Well, I don't think you cannot be outraged. And especially I was looking at this Peterborough City Council post saying the papers saying they have consulted parishes and councillors and so on. None of my parishes have been consulted. I don't know anyone who actually has been asked as a district or county councillor representing a Huntingdonshire area, what do you think about this? Because obviously everyone have been quite against, and it's not surprising that everyone will be against. You can't, I can't be in favor of something that splits God Manchester from Huntingdon or that splits Huntingdon from St. Ives. You say maybe. But the boundary is ridiculous. Whatever you think about the merits, and also I can't really be in favor of something that performs the worst in the business cases presented either, because any other option actually does better, including option E. But option A, B, and C, the initial ones, actually do better on a whole set of metrics, however you measure it.
I hope the government don't go for who's the option chosen by the people that are closest to them, because I fear for that, because somebody needs to be sitting there and looking at the merits for each case, to be honest, doing some of the numbers as well. But I fear you're right, and that may be what happens.
One of the good things though about the past week, at least, okay, we're political nerds, whatever, but it's like, even just looking on different social media groups, quite a lot of people have been talking about this. That I think is a good thing, but it does also show what one of the concerns is people don't understand why this is being done. That is a frustration as well, because there is a really good argument for why we need to change how local government is structured. Why we're going through this, but that hasn't got out to people yet, and that is a problem as well.
Neither have the arguments about how you would structure a unitary so that you keep some of the decision making and certainly some of the discussion as close as you can to the people, which is what those councils that have moved to unitaries, the counties that have moved to unitaries like Buckinghamshire and Shropshire have done. And so there are ways and means of making it work. And I suspect in about 5 or 10 years' time, somebody is going to say, okay, now let's do this again, and just let's get somebody, not to say do anything drastic, but to look at it and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, how do we fix what didn't work?
I mean, that I have to say, that concerns me, because there is a benefit to stability, and you don't want to endlessly be tinkering with the local government structure. So that frankly, it may well be the right thing to do, but yeah, I do worry about some of the process things here. I mean, I think the other thing to say though, that I'm in favour of, whichever way you get there, having unitaries, I think would be all things being equal, would be better than the split levels that we have. I just don't think they work. And I think from the point of view of, once it's bedded in and so on, and however you do local government reform, I think it will be better for, it will be a lot easier to work out who is responsible for something, rather than at the moment with where you've got district, county, but some things are also combined authority or town and parish. That is a lot of complexity, and I think that frustrates people, because it's just difficult to work out where you should be going. So there are positives to it.
I agree with all that, and there are positives. I think I said before on this podcast, I think Leicestershire said that the model that they've put forward, which includes controversially bringing Rutland in, who are fighting like crazy to maintain their historic status, but they claimed that it would save 44 million a year. And given the state of local government finances at the moment, that's not to be sniffed at. I don't think it should be the only reason. I think there's all sorts of other reasons. I think it has the potential to drive up the quality of councillors, especially if you reduce the number. You would hope that the cream would rise to the top and stay there. So you three will be all right. I just
or no one would stand anymore if it becomes a full-time job and it's not matched by enough time to do the job. But we'll get to see that one. Well, yeah, I see like someone put a comment up. Like, I think this is like an interesting debate, and like Stephen touched on it. Obviously, like the option D was proposed by the 2 Peterborough MPs, but obviously a council has to endorse it as well. So Peterborough City Council would vote.
The idea came from Sam Carling, Labour MP, and who's the other MP in Peterborough? I have no idea.
Andrew Bakes for Peterborough.
Yeah.
Although there is another option which I think is worth discussing.
Yes.
Which is what's known as option F.
Yeah.
There are lots going around. So this is option F, And you'll notice a couple of things. One is that clearly this is the right thing to do. The other is that we've eliminated Cambridge, and Cambridge no longer exists. There have been some questions about it because it's called Greater Huntingdonshire. No, people outside Huntingdonshire would not get a vote. So
whatever.
Yes.
Yes.
The other thing to point out is there is an error on this map because David I, King of Scots, started off as Earl of Huntingdon. So actually, all of Scotland is also being incorporated into Greater Huntingdonshire.
And what about this little cut in on the right hand side, on the eastern side, where Newmarket is? Surely you're going to straighten that out as well.
Well, no, because as you probably know, I'm a vegan. I don't really like sports with animals. I'm not a big fan of horse racing. So so that's going to be my excuse for having forgotten about the Newmarket salient.
Okay, I was going to say they don't eat the horses.
Okay, all right, okay. You can probably tell that I'm grasping at straws here and not really an expert on.
This is a bit challenging because HDC cabinet have to make the final decision, and that wasn't on the table for full council. And I might be swayed to vote for option F, David.
There's an amendment you could do. I'm surely you could put an amendment to say
option F. If I make the amendment, I will change the name from Greater Huntingdonshire to the Democratic Revolutionary People's Republic of St Neots. So there'll be compromises if I'm the one that proposes it. That's all I'll say.
Sorry, I've not. Is that St Neots? Is that near Tempsford?
Yes. Yeah.
But so can I bring up Anthony's comment if that's all right?
Yeah.
This thing. Yeah. People want to know why the changes are happening. What's in terms of the restructure and house ordering. I think this is a really important point. There is also a thing with the restructure. So this is possibly for another time, but Huntingdon District Council is going through its local plan update process, which might be worth talking about at some point because Huntingdon Town Council has been looking at that, and it's the number of places where and I know you're still going to have different bits of the same council, but the thing where you're having to get the district council is making assumptions in its local plan about what the county council might be doing, and particularly the combined authority. It would be simpler if there was an organisation.
Yeah, but bear in mind, alongside that, and the counter argument to this is the mayor is already going to get strategic planning powers. So, he will have a statutory role in preparing a strategic plan for the whole county anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not over the detail on that, but I actually think that that's probably quite a good thing.
I'm a big fan of it, I have to say. I'm a big fan of it. I just think we have missed, since regional spatial strategies went out the way, which was part of the East of England Assembly. Since they went out the way, we've missed something. And part of the reason why we've got infrastructure issues, not all of the reason, I have to say, but part of the reason, I think, is because of the lack of the regional spatial strategies.
Yeah, I mean the one that comes to mind on this always is Ely Junction. It's Ely, but that actually has an effect on improving rail I mean, it's not even just not just even in this part of the world, but across a great can actually have a really positive effect. But for that is the sort of strategic thing that makes sense to look at.
The A47 as well. The A47, I think, was, and one of the things I'm really pleased about was we managed to get the local government funding package together for the A14 upgrade before I think the knowledge of the regional spatial strategy in the East of England as a political entity had sort of vanished from memory. Because I think if we tried to do that now and get the A14 upgraded, I think it would fail.
It's an interesting one because it is difficult because this is I mean I think that there's a role for lots of elected officials at all levels, but explaining how the planning system is complicated, but it's not you don't necessarily have to do the details of it. And I'm not pretending for a moment to understand it, but the basic idea, the basic thing there is you are dealing with a scarce resource that where lots of people want to do different things with it. There's lots of pressures on how you balance that, and the way you do that is actually really important, and trying to get that across, that there isn't a perfect solution for planning, because people want fundamentally different and incompatible things.
No, my experience of planning, which goes back some time, is absolutely that there is no the notion of planning is, because you are going to build in somebody's backyard, you are never going to keep everybody happy. And that's a reality, and it's part of my own view about politics, about this thing about leadership, not fellowship, is politicians need to be braver in the decisions they make, and then use social media and the like afterwards to justify why they did it. And the things have got to turn around a little bit more. Yeah.
So going back to LGR, what do you think will happen on Monday, Stephen?
So we had full council this week at HTC, and so one of the things that I'm biased, but I want to applaud, is the way that HTC have made this decision, because technically, it is an executive decision, which means that the cabinet at HTC get to decide, which of the options we want to put forward as our proposal for Huntingdonshire. But from the very start, Sarah Conboy said we'd do that in consultation with the whole council. And so in the last week, was it this week? I can't remember, but in the last week or so, we had an OLS committee, which basically got the chance to grill officers and the leader on each of the options and the merits of them and the problems with them, and which was, I thought, again, a cross-council, apolitical, really, really positive experience with some really difficult questions, really robust debate. That fed in to a full council meeting last week, which was a completely free vote. Yeah, so there was the allegations. Well, no, the actuality is that at county council, the Lib Dems and the Independents were whipped into voting for option A, with the exception
also, there's no other choice. Like, I was amazed. I was watching HTC. We can vote on any of your preferred option. What do you mean no option A or option A?
Which is absolutely
amazing, mind-blowing.
Yeah, but there was political whipping going on. So the Lib Dems whipped the Lib Dems and Independent group, as we found out existed. Nobody knew that was a thing. Were whipped into voting for that. The only two people I think who didn't vote, who voted against the whip, was Julie Kerr, voted against the whip, and Anna Bradnam, who is just all sorts of wonderful, abstained. I'm so proud of Anna, and did a wonderful speech. She's fantastic. And so at full council, and this is it's not to make a decision on behalf of Huntingdonshire, because cabinet have to make a decision on Monday night, and we had a full debate for a couple of hours, and it was one of the best debates I've ever seen at HTC. If I had got my money, I am a betting man, and if I could have betted, I haven't bet obviously because there's no odds on these sorts of things, I would have, and it would have been probably unethical for me to do so.
I think it might be illegal. That might be
possibly. But there was no betting going on. But in my head, like it was going to be option. I thought we were going to go for option C rather than option D. So Huntingdonshire put forward two options. Option C, which would pair us with Cambridge City and South Cambs, and the kind of wild card option E, which has Huntingdonshire as its own standalone unitary, a very small unitary, but basically banking on future growth around RAF Witton, Alconbury Weald, St Neots, and also possibly, although it's not part of Huntingdonshire, Thamesford. Now, lots of if we'd have gone back, 6 months of Christmas, I would have thought that lots of the Conservative areas in the north and Conservative would have been in favour of one of the Peterborough options, because every other council seems to have some elements of gerrymandering in this. But I think uniformly
they shouldn't. That's the whole point, and that's why the debate was good at HGC, because the point is that you shouldn't think about the next 2 years politically, because
and so
that's for 50 years, and politics in 50 years will be wildly different than what it is today.
Exactly.
Anyway.
I'm so proud. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm so proud. And I, you know, some of the best I wrote to people and told people, so proud of my colleagues from across the chamber. Probably I'd say especially the Conservative members who uniformly or almost uniformly, especially from the north, were absolutely outraged by option.
I've had people from Yaxley moan at me about the possibility that Yaxley might become part of Peterborough, because I've said that I think the best thing in terms of travel to work areas is the north of the district of Huntingdonshire to become part of Peterborough. And I've had people have some right old moans at me, but that's happened before for Yaxley people moaning at me.
But it's not just Yaxley, it's Ramsey, it's everywhere in the north of the district. Yeah, I would have thought that those politically, those councillors might have been in favour of some sort of Peterborough alignment, but every single councillor, especially people like Kevin Golson and Sally Howe, who didn't vote because she abstained, but she will vote on Monday night, I know are against any idea. So that, you know, those places it was argued that the north of the district is more aligned with Peterborough, but according to the councillors, they don't want to be part of the Peterborough thing, or at least not by choice anyway. And so you know, I think that as cabinet, most of us were inclined, because we've got to make a decision on Monday night, and I genuinely didn't know going into that debate whether I was going to vote for option C or option E on Monday night, and I still don't know for sure, obviously, because of predetermination. But I wanted to be convinced by full council. I wanted to listen to. We can't do a big consultation in the community, but what we can do is we can listen to all the voices of all of our councillors from across the district and see what they feel. And I was so proud. I was so inspired. So I wasn't going to vote on Wednesday night or wherever it was, but in the end I did end up voting because I was convinced in that debate by the argument, and whereas I thought it would have been option C, there was a huge majority in favour, or not unanimously in favour of option E, and no other councillor. Every one of those options was on the table, but no other councillor voted for anything other than option E or option C, and most of the cabinet, apart from me and Julie Kerr, abstained. Go on.
Can I just say, from my perspective, what I think with option E? It's looking from the outside. I can see why Huntingdonshire have done it. I think it's very, very brave, and I think to do it. My problem is I don't think that option has got any legs, and I think as the process moves forward towards the government making a decision on what option they bring forward, I think the fact that Huntingdonshire have gone for option E means that they may not be listened to as much as they'd want to be. You know, when it comes to lobbying at government level, and I think that's going to be really important because of this issue about the fact that the Labour authorities are going to be listened to.
So this is a really important point, because this is the head and the heart thing as well. There are a lot of people saying, you know, that there is an emotional attachment to Huntingdonshire, and I think a lot of people, you know, that carries weight. It should carry weight, but there's a question as well that this is okay. How do we best administer this area? Identity is part of that, but it can't be all of it. And I think the point you make there is a really interesting one. There is an argument for saying, actually, if we work on the basis that the problem is that what we, you know, there is one option which I would say is clearly, you know, not good, and would cause issues, you know, particularly from where I'm in Huntingdon, which is D. That actually you need to be looking at, okay, are we better off making sure that C is at least on the table? Because I don't think anybody, I don't think anybody else has gone for C. And so, you know, it's like making sure that is at least on there. There is an argument for that as well. I don't know how to sort of assess what you do with that. But I can see people getting flack if the result is that people that the cabinet doesn't go for E, but I can actually see a logic why you wouldn't, in terms of the tactics of it.
I can see the logic of that. However, I also think you need another 3 unitary model, E or otherwise, on the table, because if D would be like one of the preferred, let's say that D ends up being one of the shortlisted or preferred options, there's nothing else that is a other 3 unitary model which kind of is better than D.
I'm the one being a cynic here, but the 3 unitary model for me, taking what are 2 council areas looking after social care at the moment and splitting that between 3, I just don't think makes sense at all. I think I think that the social care issues are actually not that I would go along with this as a final solution, I don't think, but it's an argument for a single unitary Cambridgeshire, including Peterborough, because that's where the financial crisis is, and being driven. I just don't think 3 unitaries within Cambridgeshire, because of the impact and the cost implications for social care, I don't think that's practical.
Can I pick up on that? There's an issue there as well, looking at the demographics of the area, but also how do you make the economies work? Because I think there's one of the problems here is that nobody wants to be with Peterborough. I mean, yes. because it's people know what the situation there is at the council. Its finances are very challenging and so on. And it's sort of demographically it's challenging as well. So I do wonder if government were to, because I can see the logic for, I forget which one, for the one which is Cambridge and South Cams are a unitary, and then all of the others are unitaries. I can see the logic for that. The concern people have is Peterborough. And it's like, well, how do you support Peterborough as well? And I mean, the ideal would be more money coming from central government, but as we know, there's not a lot of that at the moment. And what is the structure that is going to make Peterborough work best? Is a question that needs looking at as well.
Well, I do think part of that, because part of the reason people don't want to be part of Peterborough is because Peterborough politics is seen as a bit barking mad as well. It's not barking mad, it's nasty. Yeah. And I think there's that. And I have to say, I have concerns that Fenland becoming part of that is not going to make it better. And that bothers me. But there is an issue, that I talked about earlier on, which is less councillors might drive up the quality and the standard, and that I hope would happen. But anyway, was that you, Stephen, ready to come in?
No, I was just going to say. So the counter argument. So you said that basically. So one of the negative things, we can only submit one option, yeah. But one of definitely the negative things about going for option E, if we decide to do that tomorrow night, is that it takes option C off the table. Because if option C, the Secretary of State can't choose option C unless we put it on the table. Yeah. And so we are going to, there is talk about us proposing it as an appendix. Yeah. But it won't carry the same weight. Yeah. And I think you can more or less forget those things. So that's one of
the Secretary of State can do what they want.
No, yeah, but not.
There's going to be nobody. There's going to be nobody lobbying.
We're being advised. We're being advised, and that was the big argument at County Council. Is lots of the Lib Dems were claiming they were just doing it to keep option A on the table, so the Secretary of State can make his decision. That was their argument.
Amendments. That's the scary part as well, because the Secretary of State can also amend options. So let's say you can choose option D with amendments, and you can bring the whole Huntingdonshire, for example, into Peterborough. That is something that the Secretary of State has power to do.
So he could amend option D to make it look like option A.
Yes, or in a different boundary.
It's largely out of our control, isn't it? But the point is, though, it's not a very good endorsement of option C. However, I don't think that option C, especially since the County Council vote, I don't think that option C is really on the table. And so we could have backed an option, and I agree, I would have been in favour, and I think I am in favour. My head says option C, but my heart says option E. The trouble with option C is, from the very, very start, Cambridge City and South Cambs have made it abundantly clear that they don't want to be in partnership with Huntingdonshire.
And both voted for option B, so that there's actually consensus there in terms of what they want to go.
Absolutely. And also, you'd have to argue with that also that it's a Labour-run council, and if we accept the conspiracy theory that the government will listen more to Labour-run authorities, then Cambridge City might have, and not even that, is that Cambridge is the economic powerhouse of the country and the most important region. And so us saying we want to be part of it too, in the same way as well, the Lib Dems in East Cambs did as well, doesn't necessarily carry any weight. And so my argument of option E would be, if you're basing this on a local unitary authority for 2025, I'd agree, that option E is a bit undersized and a bit weak, But if you look at all of the government legislated development that's going to happen in Huntingdonshire with East West Rail, with the A421, with Thamesford just across the border, and whether we move the boundaries or not. So there is, I think option E hints at the possibility of a boundary review that lets St Neots incorporate Thamesford, which I think would be a great idea, because having this big new 40, the government's saying that Thamesford is going to be 40,000 people, but when you're looking to greater Thamesford, we're talking about maybe 100,000 people, which would make the St Neots, Barford, Thamesford like a significant development, bigger than Stevenage. Now that having that split across three authorities, is ridiculous. So that's got to be sorted out sometime in the future. And so that kind of, we're already part of the Oxcam arc. We're already the most significant part. We're going to get direct train stops, to Cambridge, and so Huntingdonshire is going to grow. And if we start, Martin is arguing that maybe this is only going to last 5 years. So we have to be building unitaries, which are going to last. It's not lasted for 50 years. Well, my lifetime.
I don't think it'll last 5 years. I'm not saying it's got a life of 5 years. What I think will happen is in 5 years' time, somebody will say, yes, we did this. It was broadly the right thing to do. But now just let's look at the bits we got wrong and tweak it. I don't think it's going to, and we've tweaked since 1974 consistently. It's that more than a complete revisit, I think, is coming. If I thought a revisit was coming in 5 years' time, I'd be arguing that this is a stupid thing to do, and I don't believe that at all.
But what we're trying to do is build unitaries that are robust for the future. Hopefully
absolutely.
with tweaks that take account of changing demographics and geography. And I think that if we roll forward 10 years, 15 years, I think Huntingdonshire looks very different. I do think it is an economic powerhouse, not to the scale of South Cambs and City, or City at least. And South Cambs, apart from the science parks around the outside, isn't really. And so I think that there's a good argument for looking to that future and looking for Huntingdonshire to fulfil the government's ambition for the area.
I take Keir Starmer's best mate, Andy Burnham. I would take his argument a little bit around this. There's no reason why the rest of the county can't be as great as Cambridge is, and I do passionately believe that. First of all, because Greater Cambridge is not big enough to do something that competes on the world stage with Silicon Valley. It may be intellectual enough. It may have that sort of, and all those things. It's not big enough. And so something has to be done to spread Greater Cambridge and to spread its geography. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
Yeah,
Andy
but
Burnham,
that hasn't happened, has it? That really hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't.
Finland and Peterborough have felt none of that.
I'll come back. I want to come back to that later because of a planning decision in Finland earlier on this week. But the Andy Burnham and he sets this out, and if you look at the statistics around it, it's about how the Green Book works in government and how it invests. That the way it's tweaked and the way it's managed automatically diverts resource into the areas that are already the economically strongest. And Andy Burnham talks about changing that around so you can make those places with real economic potential, you can make them realize their potential by investing more there. and it's a really, really valid argument, and a really strong argument. And you can apply the same thing and the same arguments to Cambridgeshire, and north versus south in Cambridgeshire, rural versus urban in Cambridgeshire, as you can about Manchester versus London.
The other bit that to factor into, I mean, unsurprisingly, I do agree. But the other thing to factor into this is Project Fairfax and all the stuff that's coming there. I mean, that is because the sort of defense industrial stuff actually can work quite well with the stuff, with the sort of brain power at Cambridge. So there is a lot of potential there.
I've made this point before about Project Fairfax. The thing it does to me potentially is take it takes the intelligence nous and everything else there is around what happens at Whitton at the moment at the station, and it combines it and mixes it with the intellectual capacity that there is in Cambridge. And that's why I think Project Fairfax is potentially really, really powerful in terms of UK defence. And I'm quite passionate about defence at the moment, because I think the way Trump's going, we're heading to war in 4 or 5 years' time.
Yeah. I mean, it's work. I mean, I was actually talking with Tom Sanderson about this. What happens when after the midterms in the States? But this is probably getting off the topic of Cambridgeshire politics. But there's the other thing is, I think one of the other advantages of E from the point of view of government is that you have a single authority for Project Fairfax, because I think on D would see it split across the part of it would be in the Peterborough one, part in the
it would be mostly in the mid Cambridgeshire. To be mostly you're putting a massive project into like a council that will like literally collapse in like 5 years financially, according to the business case.
One of the benefits Option E's got is that Ben Abisi-Jekti has supported it as well. And I think that's important, because I think he is. The reason I think it is because I think he's very well respected at Parliament, and he's been working like crazy around this Project Fairfax thing, and you've seen stuff coming in and around it for a long time. And I think that means the one person that will get listened to in all this is probably Ben.
Yeah, and do you know what a big pity is that my MP, Ian Sollum, hasn't commented on this publicly at all, which I find disgraceful.
I was going to ask, like, what are the views, because I assume the Lib Dems in the south and east are probably like for option B, but I haven't heard public comments on it.
Two of the people who I think still believe run his office, who Robin Wyatt and Sarah Kane, both voted for option A, and I'm not sure that we can infer his desires from their votes, but obviously, it was a whip decision across the whole of his constituency party, and so we'd have to say that he votes that. But he hasn't had the courage. He hasn't had the courage to tell us what he supports. So again. But every week we could come on here, and despite the fact I didn't like him in the beginning, we say nice things about Ben Abisi-Jekti. Also, he beat my mate, Alex, which not good.
I know,
but he's playing an absolute blinder, isn't he, on behalf of Huntingdonshire? Yeah. And his support for this, is part of what makes it more credible. Yeah, without that,
I absolutely agree with that. I just want to push back on this whipping thing. Whipping complicates everything, but it does not surprise me, and we should not be astonished and horrified that there was a whip applied to this, because there's a whip applied to so much stuff within our council.
Be honest about it. You can't stand up, and so we had Jeff C, for Liberal Democrat councillor for the Eton, standing up saying he doesn't support option A, he doesn't think it's a good option, and then voting for it, and then weasel wording his way out of it afterwards, saying, "Oh, we weren't really voting for it; we were voting for it to keep it on the table."
Yeah, it's about the narrative. Like, what upsets me, like, on all of this debate is the narrative that's constructed. Because let's say you are like part of the group, you have the whip. The whip says vote for A. just like sit there and don't do a speech. Like, no, instead we're doing like anti-government amendments, like we're kind of like trying to blame the Labour government and justifying the unjustifiable. Then we're trying to like do entire speeches about how it's not a good option, but finding some reason why it is. Like, just don't speak and vote with the whip, and that's done. I don't get it.
That, Alex, I absolutely agree with, and you know, it's one of the things I say to people. You know, when you look at when I was in a council chamber, you'll know I don't agree with something, not necessarily because of the way I vote, but because of the because of what I don't say. Because I used to be quite an active speaker in the chamber. And I absolutely agree with that. And you know, it's also true that I would try and loosen the whip a little bit at councils. The problem I have with the whip is that you get elected based on the fact that you've got a political conscience, and then you get that conscience whipped straight out of you when you get elected. And I think that's where I do have a problem, and I think they're starting to get there with Parliament. But I'm not sure they're getting it right in the way they're doing it.
We've got the odd situation.
Let me give the other view. It is easier to most councillors are elected on a party ticket, and there is an expectation you will get things done. Now, I don't get me wrong. I'm quite lucky at the town council. The party stuff doesn't come into it. There isn't, there aren't party groups, all of that sort of stuff. I can see the argument why people think, actually, no, we need to get stuff done, and so to do that, you have to be able to act as a coherent, party.
But for whose benefit, though? Not for the benefit of anybody other than Liberal Democrats.
Where I challenge that a little bit is that I mean, first of all, let's take Alex's situation. I think Alex won that seat. Alex won that seat because of how damned hard she worked, and she would have never won that seat from the Conservatives without that. And incumbency increasingly plays a role the more you get re-elected. And incumbency is what's lets you and helps you to overcome the national swings. So when you get big national swings, as is likely next time, away from Labour towards something else, it is those MPs that have been standing up, and probably from the Conservatives to somewhere else as well, by the way. It's those MPs that have really fought for their constituents that will be able to withstand that. And that's same at council level as well.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to hurt those councillors a lot, and I'll personally make it my personal mission to make sure every single member of the public and I told them before, this is what happened, is aware of the decision they made, because from my point of view, it's the biggest betrayal I've ever seen in 8 years in local politics, and I won't forgive them. It's going to be interesting to see how Tom Sanderson, independent, who was whipped into voting for option A, is going to vote a cabinet tomorrow night, because for me that's odd. That's really odd that you've got to vote for another decision.
Also change your mind, Stephen. It's possible to change your mind after a few weeks. It's possible. I agree. But why vote for that in the first place? Because the data was never there. We still haven't seen the business case. Also, I want to say, I'm not being anti-Liberal Democrat, because I am also equally, incredibly proud of my Liberal Democrat colleagues at HDC, for not following this whole kind of South Cams thing, but actually voting with their consciences and doing what's best for Huntingdonshire. Every single one of those people, especially Sarah Conboy, Brett Middleburg, Joe, all of those Liberal Democrat councils they're not following the political, but they're listening to what their residents are saying. We'll see how they vote tomorrow night, of course, because we don't know. But I suspect they're going to be listening to their council and their residents and doing what they think is the best Huntingdonshire. So while I'm being negative about that lot, the people, the Huntingdonshire Lib Dems, have done a fantastic job, and I'm proud to be in coalition.
So I just want to this quote from this comment from Kelly Louise, I think quite important. If it was up to me, I would never ever allow a town council or a parish council to get to a position where they're whipping. I really wouldn't. I think I would really object to it. I'm glad they achieved something from it, by the way. really glad, but I certainly, it's not something that I would particularly like. Anyway, are we? I think.
Can I just on that last bit, just because of how things have panned out. The person I work with most closely on Huntingdon Town Council is a guy called Brian Luckham. Now on national politics, we are very, very long way away from each other. And whatever, but we at the town council level, we actually we work. I think we work really quite effectively together. And the sort of, okay, there are philosophical differences we have on some things, but that doesn't often come into where you're dealing things on the town council level. And so I'd say you can still organize and sort of ask people, but I think bringing the party bit into it would not be where I would want to go.
No, there was a time on our town council where the Conservative group used to have group meetings 2 days before the council meeting, and I attended a couple of them, and then I stopped going because I just thought, no, I'm not playing that game. Anyway, I think we've probably done local government reorganisation to death. I just want to cover one more thing today, if we can. It shouldn't take long because I know David needs to go, but I want to talk about something that happened in Fenland, actually, and it's me having a go at Fenland again. Sort of having a go, because I do understand it. We had a huge planning application in Whittlesea decided in the week. It was for a new business park that is on the site of one of our old brickyards, next to the controversial one that's supposedly and possibly full of stuff that shouldn't be there. But it was for a new science park. Potentially, I think it was 1,600 jobs. And it was approved by the town council, the district council. No, it was recommended for approval by the district council on Wednesday, which on the surface sounds really good, except it was recommended by the district council for approval, despite Active Travel England asking for a deferment. I think with objections from Cambridgeshire County Council Highways, and with objections from Peterborough City Council Highways. And when you read through the papers, I just, much as I really, really want this science park to happen in Whittlesea, you see this happening where people have got concerns about infrastructure and everything else. And, where developers are actually paying for infrastructure. But they're saying in this case, it's not enough, it's not going to work. And they're riding roughshod over it. And it does nothing for the reputation of development when that happens, and we start seeing traffic chaos in and around Whittlesea. And I just wondered what your sort of views are, based on what I've just said.
So was it the town council or the district council that recommended approval?
So it's worth saying, at the last minute, the Secretary of State put a notice into the council, Section 31 notice, I think it is, to say before you make the decision on this, I'm going to decide whether I want to intervene. And I'm really pleased he did. And I think strategically, the council may have got this wrong, because if the Secretary of State does intervene, which I think he will, given the comments of Active Travel England, if he does intervene, that's the application done. And if they'd deferred it and said to the developer, look, unless you start doing some sensible things around and some sensible planning, then this isn't going to happen, and you need to start upping your game in terms of what you're going to do with highways and stuff like that, and active travel. And they've got a chance then of bringing this back into something that works.
So I've got to admit, I'm a little bit. So and like I said, I don't have a vast amount of experience of this, and I'm looking at things from very much from a town council level, but there's been I can think at the moment of instances like that where the highways or somebody else who's a statutory consultee has said this isn't going to work as it is.
Hmm.
And people have gone away and looked at it and tried to sort of bash it into shape. I'm a little bit surprised at that, because usually, particularly with, my experience with has been that, that generally when highways say you need to think about this, people sort of go, okay, we'll need to think about this, and one of the ones that I have seen quite often from different things is they'll say, please wait, please don't decide this yet, we need to look at it more. And I think that is generally respected.
No, absolutely, it is. No, it usually is. This application is a good few years old, so it's been submitted for a long time. The developer did one round of consultation in 2023, late 2023. Huge changes have been made since then. No reconsultation. The district council consulted in 2024 and didn't reconsult, despite the fact that there were huge changes since then as well. And those things as well, I have a concern with. But I think it's worth discussing, because it's really important. We complain about development in all sorts of ways, but the biggest complaint I get is a lack of infrastructure that comes along with these things. And in this case, we've got something where it's absolutely recognised that the necessary infrastructure isn't going to be there, and the council have said we're going to approve it because the benefits outweigh the harm.
Do you know it would be interesting to see if they're looking also cumulative effects on other things in the area and so on. I mean, it's a lot of jobs to turn down, but yeah, and getting it right in the infrastructure terms is important. Is this a case of the infrastructure won't be provided at all, or the infrastructure will be provided late in the project?
No, it's that the infrastructure and the planning isn't sufficient. So, as an example, the developer has got an aspiration for 50% active travel, basically. Buses, cycling, and whatever, and everybody is saying that's not achievable.
I mean, much as I would love that to happen, people aren't.
Yeah,
we live in a rural part of the world. People are going to need to use their car.
It might be like setting an unrealistic target, and obviously, then if you review the transport provision, it just can't meet what developer said. Yeah. I'll have to look into it when I'm not after 5 hours of leafleting, because I can't think.
I don't blame you. I just thought it was worth discussing because, I watched it, and I thought it was it was pretty unanimous. It was unanimous, apart from one of our Whittlesea councillors who basically saw the huge issues there. But my issue is a bit of a firmer hand, and I've obviously got experience from the other side of this. A bit of a firmer hand from the council with the developer, and they'd have got more out of him and more out of them. And that for me is where this needed to go next. And a deferment, I think, would have really helped it. Anyway, we've done that now, and I think we've probably covered everything we wanted to today.
I've heard there's rumours of another podcast. Yeah, let's
conclude the LGR debate.
I was going to mention that in wrapping up. So I have started my own podcast, which is more of a focus on national politics. It's called Change from the Centre. Okay, and it's called that because of it's about how, to me, the centre ground of British politics has got a responsibility to deal with this polarisation and populism by recognising that politics is fundamentally broken and driving the change from the centre ground. Because unless we do it and get to grips with it, the change is going to be made to happen from the extremes. So it's called Change from the Centre. If you search for Change from the Centre on YouTube, you'll be able to find it. And it's the first edition, a bit longer than I want to do, but it was about 20 minutes, which just about doable. But that'll certainly be the longest I'll be planning to do. And I'm doing them recorded, not live, because I'm not brave enough to do it on my own live.
Cool. Well,
Yeah, no, I'll have a listen to that. I'll have a listen to that, and I'll give you my my critical feedback.
I've had some great feedback, and I've had some quite honest feedback about how I could have structured the first episode a bit better. But the trouble is with structure, the more I formalize it, the less it comes from the heart, if you know what I mean. And I think that's true about what we do here. I think this comes across really well.
You go back to the very early episodes of this, which was me and Alex in the pub. We were very disorganised, and like 2 or 3 years later, we're still disorganised. Haven't got any better. So there is
point. Don't script. We have enough people scripting every single speech and every single thing in politics. No. This is the whole point. You can speak about LGR without scripting it. Isn't that
or
great?
Any preparation.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think we're going to finish now, and I think David is quite adamant that we should finish by leaving this map on screen so that it has an impact.
Can we pledge our loyalty to the flag of the Revolutionary People's Republic of St. Neots?
You three can do it if you want.
Careful, Stephen. That might be seen as predetermination.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, if you put a Fenland flag underneath it, I might give it some support. But obviously the Fenland flag's not endorsed because Fenland District Council aren't big enough and lovely enough to endorse it. Anyway, that's another rant. Thanks everybody who's watched, listened, done whatever today. Again, really, really appreciate it, and especially those that have commented. Thanks very much, and really appreciate it. And we will see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Maybe next Sunday. Right. See you later, everyone. Bye.